That'll be the last time I get to play that this year.
Yeah.
Because Sylvia is ending our, well, not really, but she kind of is. It's the end of Paranormal, and really, but yeah,
that's okay.
It's all right.
We just had Halloween and Dias de los Muertos, so
yeah, I know it.
So,
well,
hello everybody.
Yes, welcome everyone. It's Thursday, so we're here. We have a show. We have a guest. She's waiting.
I'm back.
And that's right. We're welcoming Daniel back because Daniel was not here last week. I'm going to say that it was probably maybe a good thing. That was 2 hours long, Dan. That was a 2-hour show. And because of a mix-up with the system that books for the interviews for the show. Because first she had scheduled today. And I'm like, oh, no, you don't. I said, I got Sylvia Shults on the show, so you got to go. So I gave the woman the boot, told her reschedule, and of course she picked the same night as the pumpkin carver. So, yeah. Did you catch any of that, by the way?
I caught parts of it. I haven't actually had a chance to sit down and watch it. I have literally been busy from last Tuesday.
That's right.
Today, I have been running like mad. And so, yes, on the road, at times I was trying to watch it, and then something interrupted me. Something interrupted me. So I'm going to sit down and watch it because I want to see it. I really do want to see it. The pumpkin carver I was really excited about having a pumpkin carver on, and then I didn't be here for it. So, yeah, I'm going to sit down and watch all of it. It just seems like when I do, something comes up.
Yeah.
So I will do it.
That's all right. You will. I know you've been busy, so that's why you were not there last week.
Nope.
So what did you do? Who did you talk to?
Well, last week I was at Knoxville's Fanboy Expo, and which is a Comic-Con, but technically the name Comic-Con is licensed, so it's an expo. And so I was there on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I signed a lot of books, met a lot of new people, a lot of returning readers who came to pick up the recent additions to the Dragon Wand series and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was really fun because at this expo, I brought a friend of mine that I've made friends with here in Michigan, who's also named Dan, down there to help me at the booth because I always need a partner there. So if I have to run to the bathroom, I'm not leaving the booth empty. And so. But the fun thing is that he has never been to Comic-Cons before. And so it was totally hilarious watching him start doing these Comic-Cons for the first time because it was like putting a kid in the middle of their first theme park. You know, all of a sudden, I invited him to one day at Motor City before I came to Fanboy just so he'd come in and check it out. I watched him walk in the door, and I'm trying to get his attention. He walks in and he goes, ah. He's just totally taken by it all, and he walks off, just wanders into the crowds. I was like, Dan. So he had a lot of fun. It was his first time to experience this, and he was absolutely having a blast. And so, but at this Comic-Con in Knoxville, they had a big event because they had original series Star Trek actors. The big name, of course, is William Shatner. It was his first convention after his space flight. So big, lots to do about that. But to add to that, they also had George Takei, who played Sulu, and Walter Koenig, who plays Chekhov in the original series, were both there. And now William Shatner, my booth is in the middle of this massive convention floor. And I look over, and the day he's there, there's people lined up going past my booth, going all the way down towards the other end. Now he's this way, I'm looking this way. There's a line that's wrapping around the whole convention floor just for his table.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, I love to meet these celebrities. You all should know that by now. I talk about it all the time. I love to meet them, but I don't want to interrupt when they're doing the convention with the actual attendees. That's what they're there for, is the people who paid to come and just enjoy it, get autographs and all that. So
Right.
I never got to see him. I saw him at a distance, but I never actually got a chance to meet him. This time, I've met him before several times. So this time, but Walter Koenig and George Takei were both more open, especially since they were there all 3 days, which William Shatner wasn't. And so when it was real slow down time, I got to go over there and say hi. I actually brought a copy of Earth/Starship to George Takei and got to talk to him. And he was so nice. He and his husband were sitting there talking, and he said he's going to want us to read the book. So I hope he does. And Walter Koenig, Walter Koenig is a card. I have met him several times now. In fact, he actually came over to my booth one time because he's one of these people who's just eternally grumpy, but in that grandpa kind of way. You like him. He's nice, but he's always just kind of grumpy. So I had a little fun with him. But then I got to meet Ed Begley Jr., which and I can't think of the name of the character, but he played on Voyager. You know who Ed Begley Jr. is?
I do.
He played on Voyager in the 2-part episode where they go back to 1996 LA. He was the bad guy, the one who owned the tech company that stole the tech.
Oh, yeah.
He played in all kinds of movies, Real Genius, and I mean, he's played tons of movies and roles and stuff. So I've seen a lot of his stuff, and so I was really excited to meet him for the first time. And then I met Marty. Why am I saying? He did the voice of Courage the Cowardly Dog on Cartoon Network show under the same name. And he also has done a dozen, acting roles. The only voice he's ever done has been Courage. But he was on CSI, he's been NCIS, he's all kinds of roles he's done. But he is so friendly. I went over just to meet him when it slowed down. And cartoon voice actors don't get as much attention at these events as just actors. So right. I walk over there, and his booth is practically empty, whereas others are full. And so I walked over to just talk to him, say hi. Oh, he was just so outgoing. He wanted to meet and shake hands, talk. And after we talked for a bit, and he was asking me about like Knoxville and stuff, because first time there. And he wanted to take a picture with me. He grabbed his phone, and we selfied together. And then he said, "Want to get your phone?" And so I selfied with him. So I got pictures with him. He was a blast to meet.
Awesome.
So, and I've met the lady who played she played in Psycho as the lady in Psycho. I've never actually seen the movie. She was there. I met her. The one who played Tinkerbell, voiced Tinkerbell in the movies. One who did the current Peter Pan voice. I talked to them for a bit. Joe Jusko, who's a comic book artist was prolific in doing a lot of DC and Marvel comics he did the Ninja Turtles for a lot of years and stuff. So I had a lot of fun meeting these people, met some more authors. It was a great time. I really enjoyed meeting a lot of people and then meeting a lot of readers. I had a lot of books picked up, and I had some people bringing books in for me to sign. I mean, it was a really fun event. And just like Dan, I'm going to get Brian to one of these days and watch him kind of melt into the Comic-Con culture, because it's a totally unique experience. And what he learned, and it's something that I try to explain to people, is that when you go into a Comic-Con, there are very few barriers. And what I mean by that is that you'll see people walking around in whatever cosplay they want to, no matter how silly you might think it is outside of that. Inside of that, everybody is just approving. Everybody is happy you're there. Nobody is judging anybody else. You can whatever your color you are, whatever you want to claim, nobody's there to judge. Everybody is there just to enjoy all the fandom around them, from horror to anime, from sci-fi to fantasy. Everybody is just all together. There's no arguments back and forth about whether Star Trek is better than Star Wars. That's not there. Everybody is there to have fun, and no matter what you want to be while you're there, everybody likes you for it. Nobody is there to judge you. And Dan, my friend, he kind of caught on to that here in Motor City, but really got it there. He's like, wow, it's so different inside here. I'm like, yeah. And you'll find, I saw a woman who was 82 years old dressed in cosplay as a Disney princess. I met little kids coming up dressed as like Chucky from horror movies. I've seen whole
Oh,
families come dressed up in all very good costumes. So there's a big huge misconception. It's all like 40-something nerds or all big fat guys. Far from it. So it is quite a melting pot of everybody, and everybody's there having fun. That's what I love
sure.
about it.
Yeah.
Everybody there is having fun. So if you're not having fun, it's your choice. You are making that choice to be unhappy at a Comic-Con. So
Absolutely.
I recommend it. If you like any of that kind of stuff. I said anime, horror, sci-fi or fantasy, books, movies, comic books. Nobody's going to restrain you. It's all there.
Yeah.
Oh, hello, Mr. John Clark. Heather,
Yes.
Amber, Ashley, and Valerie is what I see on mine right now.
Absolutely. Yes. Everyone is here so far. We're missing a couple of people, but that's all right. They will join us fairly soon here. And of course, if you're watching, please don't forget to like, share. If you're watching us on YouTube or on Twitch, don't forget to subscribe. Get those notifications when Dan and I go live boop, boop, on our show. Because you never know who's going to be on. But tonight is like the icing on the cake, the cherry on top, maybe. The peanut butter to my peanut butter M&Ms. Sylvia Shults is on tonight, so we're going to be bringing her on very soon here, so we can get talking about Days of the Dead, her latest.
She's been talking about this book for a while now. When I co-hosted as a guest host a while back with her on here, we talked about this, and she was working on it. It's been quite the venture of her putting it together, and so I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that Ashley, she did say hello back to you, but unfortunately Sylvia wrote it in the wrong chat room. So she did say hello, Ashley. Just wanted to point that out. So, and other people, if you do have questions for Sylvia during the show, just post them.
Yep.
I will make sure that she can read them and respond herself. How about that? So, all right, let's get to it. Let's bring her on and get to the good stuff. Hello, Sylvia.
Hello. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Starting to get cold here, so I am warm and snug in my house and enjoying a cup of hot chocolate while I'm talking. So life is good.
Good. It sounds good.
And to staying in theme, Sylvia is a disembodied voice right now.
Yeah, sorry about that. Technology is great when it works, but
you're still here, so that's all that
It
matters.
wouldn't be an interview with Sylvia Shults unless something went wrong with the camera.
Hey now.
Oh,
it's just gremlins. That's all. Ghosts that followed me home from the cemetery, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, why don't you start by introducing your book? What you just released here.
All right. Well, Dan, you said that I have been talking about this for a long time, and yes, I have, but it's done. It's out in the world. It is Days of the Dead, a year of true ghost stories. So yes, 366 true ghost stories, one for every single day of the year. And I think I should get bonus points because I did not write about the Valentine's Day massacre for February 14th. So there.
You avoided the obvious there.
Right. That's low-hanging fruit. I got to find something more interesting than, well, not more interesting, but more obscure than that.
Nice.
There are some well-known stories in here. There are some little-known stories. I hope people really enjoy the lengths that I went to get these stories for you.
Now, something I'm curious about. You know, some of these stories, if they're well known, have you taken an angle of kind of correcting misconceptions that people might have?
Um, when I do find that yes, I do. For the well-known stories, I try to put a personal spin on it. Um, like for the Villisca Axe murder day, the story of the Villisca Axe murder, I actually spent the night in that house. So I wrote about not only the murders and the haunting associated with them, but also my personal experience with the house, which was really quite amazing. Um, I, I have jumped out of my skin twice on investigations in my career as a ghost hunter. That was one of the occasions. And I wrote about it in the book. Do you guys want to hear what happened?
Go for it.
Yeah.
All right. So, I was the story of the Villisca Axe murder house, for anyone who is not familiar with it. June 12th, 1912. There was a family in Villisca, Iowa, mother, father, Josiah Moore and his wife, and their 4 children, along with 2 visiting neighbor girls, were slaughtered in their beds. They were killed by somebody. The killer was never found, but every single one of them was beaten in the face and the head with an axe. Fortunately, they were not awake for it. There was one of the little neighbor girls might have woken up, but other than that, they were not awake for it, which is a real blessing. But the house remembers this. When I went to spend the night there, I was fortunate enough to spend the first 45 minutes or so of my investigation in the house all by myself. Nobody else was there. Everyone else arrived a little bit later from having supper. So I went in there and experienced it.
Sylvia, we kind of lost your voice there.
Okay, I have no idea what's going on there.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Hey, back.
Okay.
Nope. Again. All we got was an okay, and then
Anytime she talks about ghosts or spirits or anything spooky related, we can't see her, we can't hear her. It happens every show. And we lost her. So we'll let her come back. But in the meantime, I have a feeling that this is going to happen. So, folks, bear with us.
Technology.
Yeah, well, technology can't be perfect every single time, unfortunately. So, yeah. Valerie, like your backdrop, Brian. Yes, I like it too.
Mine is a beautiful door. His is a lovely, spooky house.
Well, this is the Haunted Mansion behind me.
Mm-hmm. Thought that's what it was.
So, yes. Ronald Lovett. Is that how you say your last name, Ronald? Hi, Sylvia. She'll come back. I'm pretty sure she will. Hopefully. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. Again, in the meantime, don't forget to like and share this, please.
So, did you have a lot of trick-or-treaters?
That's right. Sunday was Halloween for most of us, trick-or-treat night. Unless you were the next town over that did it on Saturday. I don't know why, but whatever. I don't know how many bags he made. They were pretty big bags of candy. We just had them laid out on a table. So instead of handing them the candy, we just laid the bags of candy on like a table. So they just walked up to the house and just took it themselves. That way, we're just standing back. So I mean, there was quite a bit. I think we had 4 pails worth of candy. So we had 8 bags left. There she is. Let's go. I'm going to go ahead and bring her on regardless because she's back. Hello.
Okay. Yes, I'm back. I have no idea what happened there. I think my phone was possessed.
Yeah.
Lord.
I'm telling you. That's what I just said.
Anyway, so yeah, I was in the Villisca Axe murder house by myself for 45 minutes or so. And when I was walking around at the beginning of that and during that evening, I could tell that the house remembered what had gone on. It was a house where 4 children were being raised with love and compassion and joy. And the house felt very, very home-like for that first part of the evening. And I spent the night there, slept in the house. And the next morning, I also was there by myself after everyone had gone. I locked up the house, and I had gone into the house there was another photograph that I wanted to take real quick. So I went into the house and went up to the bedrooms where these murders happened. And I've got a really good imagination, and I could imagine what it would have been like for these first responders coming across this murder scene. And I could picture what it would be like. I mean, I was thinking to myself, okay, these first responders, these people who came into after the murders, they could carry the children down the stairs, but the stairs are very steep and very narrow. And I thought, how did they get the 2 grown-ups down the stairs? They must have had to do it in a fireman's carry or something. That would have been really traumatic for someone to do. And it was like the house remembered that trauma. I was really uncomfortable and just could not wait to get out of there. The change in the vibe of the house was just so different between the evening before and the morning after. And I think that's because the murders were discovered in the very early morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning or so. That's when the murders were discovered. So I think the house was kind of remembering that. But what made me jump for like only the second time in my career. The night before, I was in the house, and there were other investigators there at that point. It was just past dark. I was sitting in the children's bedroom, sitting on one of the beds, and there was a bed across the room from me and kind of a crib to my left. I'm sorry, to my right. And I was just sitting there enjoying the evening. It was starting to get dark, and there were only 2 other investigators up there and on the second floor of the house with me, and they were in the attic. So it was just the 3 of us up there, and I was just by myself, and they were in the other room. And all of a sudden, from the air next to me, to my right, above the crib, I heard a snap, like someone had stepped on a twig about the width of my thumb or something, and completely unexpected. And I jumped and I yelped and I said, "What the fudge was that?" Only I did not say fudge. And I jumped up from the bed, and I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. Once I got over my shock, it was unexpected. So I decided to tell everybody, you got to share something like that. So I headed out of the kids' bedroom and happened to glance into the attic where the other 2 investigators were. And they looked out at me and they said, they said, "What was that noise?" I said, "I have no idea. That was completely unexpected. I don't know what caused it. It wasn't me. It was something else." And they were like, "Oh, okay." So I headed down those narrow, steep stairs, forgetting for a moment exactly how small this house actually is. I was heading down the stairs, and one of the hosts for the evening was at the bottom of the stairs waiting for me. It was Troy Taylor, the renowned ghost hunter Troy Taylor, and his partner that were hosting it. And Lisa, his partner, was at the bottom of the stairs looking up at me. And I said, "Lisa, you'll never guess what happened. Oh my gosh." And she looked at me and said, "We know." I'm like, "What do you mean you know?" She said, "We could hear you downstairs." Like I said, it's a very small house.
Yeah.
And when I let loose with my F-bomb from upstairs, Troy looked up, looked at Lisa, and said, "Huh, I've never heard Sylvia swear like that."
Oh, Lord.
Sometimes the paranormal just catches you by surprise.
I guess so.
Yeah. So
Mm.
it was fun.
So I guess that answers Valerie's question, which is, did you go into the attic?
Oh man, yes. I spent quite some time in the attic. When I was there by myself, I went into the attic, and I, for those of you who are wondering why Valerie asked that question, the reason is because the theory is that the murderer hid in the attic until everyone had gone to sleep and crept out in the wee hours of the morning and slaughtered everyone. They found several cigarette butts in the attic, I believe, that showed that he was there waiting for quite some time before sneaking out to kill everyone in the house. So yes, Valerie, I did go into the attic, and very strange thing happened. I was poking around in the attic. There's very little furniture of any kind in there. A couple of chairs for investigators to sit on, but that's about it. And it was still light out. And I looked around the attic, and I looked at the roof of the attic, and there's no insulation there, but you can see where the roofing nails have been nailed in to attach the shingles to the roof. And I noticed this, and I said aloud, "Wow, someone hiding up here would have to be really careful, because if you stood up too fast," and the guy was pretty tall, apparently, if you stood up too fast, you could really hurt yourself on these nails. You could crack your head and open your head, and you could really hurt yourself. And as soon as I said, "really hurt yourself," I just felt like I wanted to get out of that attic and not stay a moment more. So I noped out of the attic and went downstairs. I just couldn't handle it for a moment or two. It was just this overpowering feeling of, I have to get out of here right now.
Mm.
When did this happen? When was the actual murder?
I believe it was June 12th, 1912.
Oh, okay. So, long time ago.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. So, okay, that was a harrowing experience on your end, on their end, and all together.
Yeah.
So, of the book itself. Now, how long did it take you to put all these stories together?
It took me 2 years of research and 14 months of writing. I started writing it in December of 2019 and finished it January 20th, 2021.
Wow.
So just under 14 months. I tried real hard to stay ahead of the calendar when I was writing it, and I got quite a lot of it done during quarantine, actually. I consider this my quarantine book because a lot of it, I was able to get ahead of the calendar a bit during quarantine. So that was good.
So, okay, I was going to ask this question before we started, but I think you kind of answered it by saying about the Valentine's one. Do each of these stories have correlating date to the calendar so that each one is a day of the year?
Exactly, yes. I didn't just pick 366 random ghost stories. Each story is tied to a certain date, whether it's the date something happened or a date that a recurring haunting happens. Um, there's a really fun thing, I think it's February 23rd, where there's a mansion in the South, I believe it's South Carolina, that there is a ghostly Confederate army that opens the front door, marches in through the front hall, goes up to one of the bedrooms, hangs out for a little while, about 10 minutes or so, and then marches back down the stairway and out the front door. And this is very unusual for any kind of haunting, to have a recurring thing that is predictable. That's the holy grail of what paranormal investigators look for, is something predictable, because you find that very rarely in the paranormal. So I was always very excited to find something that's predictable.
How many of these did you get to go explore yourself?
Oh, a couple. Villisca, and I've been to Gettysburg 3 times so far, and it was a lot of fun writing about that battle as well, all the hauntings associated with Gettysburg. That's such an amazing place. So yeah, I've had personal experience with a couple of these places.
Are they
But it's really worldwide. I mean, these stories do come from several different centuries and all over the world.
You just answered my question before I asked it. I was going to say if they're all in the United States or all over the world, but
worldwide, yeah. The story for January 1st is actually from Thailand, the Santika nightclub fire. So that was just an amazing way to start off the year. There was a horrible fire in a nightclub called Santika in Bangkok, Thailand. And they had this fire New Year's Eve, going up to the countdown to New Year's. And the thing is that the theme of the party was Santika's last night, or Bye Bye Santika, whatever way you want to translate that, because the club was scheduled to move to a new location. And the band that they had play for that final night of that location was a Thai band called Burn. And I swear to God, I'm not making any of this up. There were fireworks, sparklers on stage, and it set the nightclub on fire.
Oh, jeez.
And there was like one fire extinguisher for the whole club, and very, very temporary construction. There were a lot of tarps that caught fire and were burning and dripping hot plastic on people. And yeah, it was a tragedy, and people died, and it's haunted to this day. That site is. So yeah.
Valerie asked if any of your stories take place in a cemetery.
Yes, actually, the very last story of the year, the story for January 31st, there are 2 stories that take place in cemeteries. The cemetery is in the Amana colonies in Iowa. There are, I write about the fact that there are evergreen trees in the cemetery that have the way that people honor the dead in this particular cemetery. There are no family plots, because everyone in the Amana colonies is considered family, so they're not divided up at all. There pine trees around the cemetery. Children decorate the graves with these pine boughs, and the tradition is that the children in the cemetery use these pine boughs and carry them away for whatever reason. They like the fact that people leave pine boughs on their graves, and they like to carry them off. And there's also the Granny Sprague Cemetery very close to that. And that's an interesting cemetery because there's only one grave in it. It's the resting place of a little girl named Mary Wright, who died at only 6 years of age of an infection in 1854. And the very last few minutes of every year, Mary manifests as a blue glow above her grave.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's several cemetery stories in the book.
So first we say hi to Barbara. She says hi to us.
Hello, hello. Hi, Barbara.
And so then Ashley asks, what one is the scariest one?
The scariest. Oh man. Oh, okay. So I think this one is in April. There were two boys in their late teens, and this happened in Scotland. I think it's the Annan Road story in Scotland. They were driving home to their house in Annan, and they were taking the Annan Road. So the older kid was driving, and they took off, and it was like a half-hour drive back to their house from wherever it was that they were. And as they were driving, it was after dark, and they saw like the figure of an old lady swoop down at their car and pull up right before she got to the windshield, and then she just disappeared. And they're like, whoa, that was really weird. And then they kept driving, and then they saw another figure that swooped down as if it was going to attack the car, and then that disappeared. And they kept seeing these crazy things. There were dogs that were big black dogs that would run alongside the car for a little while, and figures that stood in the road, and the car would drive right through them, and then they burst apart into nothingness as the car passed. At one point, the driver stopped the car and rolled down the window, and the air around the car was just icy cold. So he rolled the window back up and started the car again, and kept on driving. And they kept on seeing these strange creatures and these phantasms that would swoop in to attack the car. And they kept driving. They're like, we are not stopping again. We are not getting out of this car. It's not going to happen. And then they were about 10 minutes away from the town where they lived when they saw the lights of a truck. They're like, oh, thank goodness. This is great. Thank goodness, a little bit of normalcy. And they saw the brake lights of the rear tail lights of a truck in front of them. They're like, oh, phew, thank goodness. And their car was coming up on this truck, and the brakes on their car wouldn't work. The driver slamming on the brakes, trying to not rear end this car and this truck that's in front of him. And he's slamming the brakes, and the car won't stop. And they're just about to rear end this truck, and the truck vanishes. It was just another bit of weirdness on the road. And I'm like, okay, thank goodness that wasn't an actual truck. Thank goodness that wasn't an actual accident. And they pulled into, like 10 minutes later, they reached their house, and they were fine, and the weirdness had stopped. And they got into the house, and they're like, what on earth just happened? That was just so bizarre. But I think that is the most disconcerting and probably the scariest story in that whole book, just because it's so inexplicable. And any funny ones, Ashley? Funny ones. There are a couple of funny ones. One I particularly enjoy is the one I chose for February 14th. Since I refuse to write about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, I'm saving that for another book that's coming up. But I found a story in Sheffield, England for February 14th. There was a young lady in like the 1880s or so that was jilted by her fiance, left at the altar. So she came home from the church and hanged herself in her apartment house. And this apartment house later became shops. And one of the shops is a chocolate shop. It's kind of like the English version of Fannie Mae's. So this chocolate shop is located in the apartment building where this woman used to live back in the day. And she still haunts the chocolate shop. She really does not like it when men come into the shop. She will attack men that come in. She has tried to push men down the stairs in the shop. The amusing part of this is that every Valentine's Day, the shop will put up a display of chocolate, and she leaves the square or rectangular boxes alone, but if there are heart-shaped boxes of chocolate into the display, she'll knock those over onto the floor. And there was one time that a burglar broke into the shop with the intention of stealing the money out of the cash register, and something spooked him so badly that he ran away. And they caught him later on because he had left all those burglary tools behind with a lovely set of fingerprints on them. So she foiled a burglary and helped the police catch a burglar.
That is pretty good. That one's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are other funny ones in there, Ashley. That was the one that sprang to mind.
Oh. So what is the saddest?
Saddest story. Ooh, boy. I think the saddest story is, and I don't remember what date this is. It is Lady Margaret Pole, who ran afoul of King Henry VIII. King Henry VIII beheaded a lot of women besides Anne Boleyn. She was, the way she ran afoul of the king was that her son was, I think, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and he did not agree with Henry's politics at all. So he was in exile in France, and so he was beyond the reach of the king. But King Henry VIII kind of took it out on Lady Margaret Pole. She was a practicing Catholic. She kept it on the down low, but she was still targeted by the king for the outspokenness of her son. So she was thrown into the Tower of London, spent a couple of years there. She had admitted to going to Catholic services, but she was accused of leading kind of a protest in the Catholic Church. And she was like, no, I didn't actually have anything to do with it. I've attended services, but I didn't lead this protest. But she was thrown into the tower anyway. And after a couple of years, Henry decided to execute her. And she was taken out onto Tower Green, and she was beheaded. But the sad thing is that the executioner was very new at his job, and he wasn't very good at his job. So, and you say chopping off somebody's head, like Anne Boleyn or whoever, and we think it's just this quick little thing because we think of guillotines or whatever, which is automated and very efficient. But if you're chopping somebody's head off with a sword, like they would do in England rather than in France, you have to go through the spinal cord and all the muscles that hold up the head, that are in the neck, that hold the head upright. And you've also got the very thick cartilage of the windpipe. It takes real effort to chop off a head. And this guy was totally new at the job. So Margaret Pole had her head on the chopping block, and this guy, the executioner, swung his sword and missed and hit her in the shoulder. And she got up and started screaming, and he panicked and started hacking away at her. And it took him like several tries to chop off her head, and she's screaming the whole time and freaking out, as well she might. And he finally got her head separated from her body, but gosh, it was a trial. It was a real chore. So yeah, I think that's the saddest story of the book. So Margaret Pole definitely haunts Tower Green because her death was so very traumatic.
Gruesome,
So
yeah.
that gets my vote for the saddest story.
Yeah, it's actually something that I've studied in history. Is most people don't realize the guillotine was invented to make execution more humane.
Yeah,
And because prior to the guillotine, beheading people and hanging people both were not an exact art. They were very gruesome, and often people didn't die right away. There's some horrible stories of how people suffered long time on
definitely.
all of that. So burning or drowning people was actually a safer way to kill them without, ultimately torturing them. But the guillotine was supposed to be a way to make it more humane, but unfortunately it turned into a murder machine. Long story there, but yeah, that's awful.
Yeah, that was. I came across a lot of hanging stories in the book, and of course, then there's also Moundsville Prison. Ashley, I do see your question there. What is your ultimate favorite? I'm going to answer that in half a second. But Moundsville Prison, they performed hangings there, and they were open to the public, and it was considered great sport to go and see an execution at Moundsville Prison. They would bring picnics and everything. And there was one poor guy that they misjudged the weight. So when you hang somebody, you have to take into account their weight and the length of the rope to hang them efficiently and as humanely as possible. Well, they really miscalculated this guy's weight as it related to the rope, the length, and one of the prisoners hanged at Moundsville Prison reached the end of the rope and kept going, and his head popped right off.
Well, that actually happened quite often. I have read about that happening. And
yeah,
it's and yes, it used to be quite the entertainment to go and watch executions. And I'm like, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, I could not watch that. It's just horrifying. Ashley, you had the question of which is my ultimate favorite. I have two. There's the murder of the Black Donnellys, a murder in 1880. There was the Donnelly family in Ontario, Canada, and their neighbors didn't like them much. It's a really long, complicated, involved story that I won't really get into the details now, but I read about this, and basically it said that a bunch of the Donnelly family members were killed because their neighbors didn't like them. And I read this, and I thought, well, hang on a second. My neighbors don't like me. I know there's more to the story than this.
Yeah.
So I did some research, and it's this fascinating, complex story that reaches back decades and even centuries because but John, isn't it fascinating? Gosh. The Donnellys were from Ireland. They came over from Ireland, and they brought that Protestant versus Catholic rivalry with them. The whole town was caught up in this rivalry between the Protestant and the Catholic, and it spilled over into the relationship with the Donnellys had with their neighbors, and it ended up with Mr. and Mrs. Donnelly and their son Tom and their niece Bridget being murdered in their house, and their house set afire. And Will Donnelly, one of the brothers, his brother John was killed at his house. So it ended up with 5 people dead and a house in flames. And yeah, it's just this amazing story. And they knew who did it. They had an eyewitness to the crime that survived the massacre, a 12-year-old boy who escaped and ran to a house for help. And they had eyewitness, and Will Donnelly was also an eyewitness to them. And they both identified the members of this mob that killed 5 people, and they were never brought to justice. They were brought to trial and found not guilty. It was just amazing. Stop it. There's a dog in here. You need to hush, child. So that's one of my favorites, just because it's such a fascinating, involved story. And the other one of my other favorite stories is the story of Celia Rose. And you would think that a young girl with the name of Celia Rose would be this pretty, winsome little girl with blonde curls whose only ambition would be to sit and eat strawberries and cream and work on her embroidery. You would be wrong. Celia Rose was in her early 20s, and she was an oops baby. And she had an older brother and older parents. And she didn't do much of anything. She was not a very good school student, didn't have many friends, had a couple of friends, but not many. And she would just kind of wander around the countryside doing her own thing and lost her own little world. Well, there was a neighbor kid named Guy, who was 17 years old, and Celie saw him plowing the fields of the neighboring farm, and decided that she had a crush on him. And he would talk to her, he would be nice to her, but she misinterpreted that as, oh, he loves me, we're going to get married. He really wasn't interested in her, but she had this idea in her head that they were going to get married someday. And Guy finally went to his dad and said, look, this Celie girl keeps hanging around and bothering me. So Guy's father went to Celie's father and said, you need to rein in your daughter because she's really annoying my son. So Mr. Rose was hideously embarrassed about this. And he took Celie to task. He's like, look, we just get your head out of the clouds. You're not going to marry this kid. It's the end of it. So Celie decided to poison her mother and father and brothers. She took arsenic. She took rat poison and sprinkled it in their cottage cheese. Her father died right away. Her brother died the next day. Her mother didn't have as much of it, so the mother survived. But Celie came in under suspicion for this because she was the only member of the family that did not take sick after eating this cottage cheese. So her mother was on the mend for a couple of weeks and said, you know what, Celie, we have to move. I mean, people are going to start talking. People think you poisoned the rest of the family, and you're still not going to marry this kid. So Celie did not want to move. She did not want to have her dreams dashed. So she had put the pepper box that she'd put the arsenic in, she'd hid it in the garden under a dock plant that has very large, broad leaves. So she went out into the garden, retrieved the pepper box, and fixed her mother a dish of bread and milk and salted it again with the arsenic and killed her off for good because she didn't want to move out of the area. So she was apprehended for the poisonings and brought to trial and found not guilty by reason of insanity, and she spent the rest of her life in an insane asylum. So that's a very interesting story too. That's one of my favorites. Ron, what about my Gettysburg experiences? Oh boy, Gettysburg is such an amazing place. The energy of that place is still so powerful. It's touristy, yeah. There's no doubt about that. But it's touristy for a reason, because those battlefields are just so stained with emotion. There was one experience that I had the first year I went, which was 3 years ago. I was on Little Round Top, which is one of my favorite places on the battlefield because it's just so magnificent. I was this experience, you have to understand, was completely subjective. And if people want to call shenanigans on it, that's fine. It's my experience. I stand by what what I experienced. And if someone doesn't believe me, that's completely fine. Um, I was standing near one of the boulders. Little Round Top is just covered with these huge, massive rock formations. And I was standing next to one of them, and there was a plaque on it that said that that boulder was where Governor Morris stood for a while to watch the battle. I was standing next to this boulder, just looking around, and all of a sudden, my knees kind of went wobbly. I just came over all funny, as they used to say. And I looked over, and I could see someone, not physically, but I could see them in my mind's eye. And it was a man in a dark blue uniform with a hat on, not like a campaign hat, not like a slouch hat, not like the kepi that the soldiers would wear, but a higher up ranking officer's hat. And he's wearing white gloves, and he was leaning against this boulder with his left hand on the boulder, and he was kind of looking around. And it lasted for a couple of moments, and then that internal vision went away, and my knees got solid again, and life kind of went on. It was just a really intriguing, fascinating experience. And like I said, completely subjective, but it was really neat.
So the book is out now?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, it is.
Out as an ebook and print?
Both. Yep.
So check out this book. It sounds like it'd be a fascinating read. Every day you could sit down with a new story and read it and enjoy learning a little bit of history as well as what's happening today. I wanted to ask a couple questions that don't relate to the story, to the book, perhaps. But after last time you were on here, I had some people who asked me personally some questions, and I didn't have an answer for them because I'm not a ghost hunter. I'm not in that sphere, and I didn't want to answer without knowing this. They asked the questions. First one is, do ghost hunters believe that everybody who has died is currently a ghost here, or only some people?
That's a really good question. I can't speak for all paranormal investigators, but my personal belief is that there are several different kinds of spirits. There are spirits that haunt a place because they're stuck there, and that's usually because of trauma, sudden death, or unfinished business, whatnot. And there are also spirits that, the general consensus among investigators, I think, is that an entity of that kind that is stuck there is more properly referred to as a ghost. It haunts a place, it's stuck there, and it can't go back and forth between whatever it is that's out there and the place that they haunt. What a lot of investigators consider spirits rather than ghosts are entities that have passed on and have the ability to come back to places that they loved in life and visit people that they loved in life. And I think, if I had to take a guess, spirits far outweigh ghosts, if that makes sense. There are many more instances of entities coming back because they want to visit the living, they want to make contact with the living, rather than places that are steeped in misery and have ghosts attached to them because they can't help it that they don't know anything else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it makes logic makes sense. So that was one of the questions I couldn't answer. That's a good answer. I can say, and I know with many things like this, it spins into the realm of, you might say, belief or theory. So not
Oh,
everybody's
yeah,
going to hold the exact same opinion. I understand that, but that's a good general idea I can pass on. And the other one that was that kind of struck me because like I don't know was if a ghost, like you said, somebody is still attached to a location, is in said location, but that place is removed, destroyed, otherwise gone. What happens to it?
That also is a really good question. Sometimes I've I've read enough that I believe there are several different things that can happen. First is the haunting just stops.
Mm-hmm.
The spirit moves on. It no longer has that place to haunt, so it moves on to whatever is waiting for us. Second, it stays attached to the land. If the building is just completely demolished, it just hangs out in that area. Or if there's another building close by, it will move to that building. There are spirits. I've had this experience with several different places. One of the places I write about in the book, oh, I'm trying to remember if this is in Boston, but there was another nightclub fire, and I want to say it was in Boston, that several people died in the fire, and their energy has moved to a nightclub that was founded after the fire a couple buildings away. And there are the building in which this new nightclub is has also a dance studio in it, and these spirits that died in the fire now haunt the dance studio. And there's a woman who does a lot of videos where she teaches people how to dance, and these entities show up in her videos as light anomalies, and there are several different personalities that she has identified because the not light anomalies behave in different ways. There's one that will zip across the screen really fast. There's one that kind of goes around slowly. And there's another one still that kind of dances to the rhythm of the music that's playing. Hey Joyce, how you doing? Thanks for joining us. So yeah, so that is an example of entities that the place where they died no longer exists, so they move to another place that's nearby. That has also happened with, and I get this question all the time, with the Peoria State Hospital. We circle back around to that every single time, don't we? We lost the Bowen building a couple summers ago, and oh, thank you, Ashley. I appreciate that. And people ask me all the time, what happens to the ghosts at the Bowen building when that got destroyed? And I'm so happy to be able to tell them there's still 12 buildings of the asylum still standing. So whatever spirits were hanging around the Bowen building can very easily go to another asylum building and hang out there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that does clearly answer. That's a good way to look at it. So, anyways, so people, as you're watching this, we are kind of getting towards the end here. This book is Days of the Dead, or that I'm saying that right, correct?
Yeah.
Yay! And it's 366 stories of ghosts, but it's a fun book that will show you that not all ghost stories have to be creepy or spooky. They're all meant to be read at Halloween. They are part of our history. They are part of our current today. And trust me, ghosts don't just come out on Halloween. Some might, as she said, but they don't come out on Halloween. So this book you can entertain yourself every day of the year, including leap year. So you are here for this book, and check it out. I'm sure it's on Amazon.
It is, yes. And there's also bookshop.org.
Yep.
If you buy a book through Bookshop, that actually helps support independent bookstores. So I try to send people to bookshop.org as well as Amazon.
That's good. Yes. Independent bookstores definitely need that kind of support. I approve that entirely.
Thank you, Joyce.
Yep. So check out the book, and it's read the stories. Tell your friends about it.
Yeah, I've posted the link. So the link to the book for Amazon is on our page.
Thank you, Brian.
So go check it out. And of course, your website, sylviashults.wordpress.com.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was kind of curious, Sylvia. Do you do book signings a lot?
I do. Of course, with COVID, that has kind of we've throttled back on that. But I am getting back out there. I did a couple library talks in October, and I'm going to be doing another book signing next Saturday at the Peoria Library. So there's a big author fair going on, so I'll be at that. So yeah, I'm getting back out there slowly but surely.
The convention I was at this past weekend was held over Halloween. My trick-or-treating experience was the candy at my booth because we had kids coming around trick-or-treating around the convention, which was great. Lots of fun. But I noticed when I walked around there that several of the authors, since this convention, and many others have these, but this convention has 2 a year. They have the big one in June, which is just the everything, but then they have a Halloween one every year, which is normally just all the Halloween stuff. They do horror, they do ghosts, they do that kind of stuff. This year they had to combine the two, but I saw several people with true ghost story books there promoting those. So I'd recommend looking up some the Comic Cons or specialized conventions like that, because you're going to find a lot of people who love this stuff. And
yes. I really prefer going to conventions rather than author fairs. Mm-hmm. The vibe is completely different. Ashley and Amber, thank you so much for your kind words. I appreciate that. The conventions, they seem to be a lot more energetic than author get-togethers. There's just so much more going on, I guess. I guess that's the best way to put it. Where is the one that you went to?
The one I went to this past is in Knoxville, Tennessee, at the World's Fair Park.
Ooh, cool.
Right there. We were directly under the Sun Sphere. And then the one I was at the week before that was here in Michigan, in Novi, which is just outside of Detroit. Really nice big convention they hold here every year.
There wasn't Michigan Paracon, was it?
I'm sorry, what?
That wasn't Michigan Paracon, was it?
No. I know about that one. This is Motor City Comic Con. It's the largest Comic Con in Michigan, one of the largest in the Midwest. But yeah, they do have Paracon. They have, and I mean, the Indianapolis Fanboy has one. They're going to do it in Indianapolis soon. I was supposed to be at it, but they haven't given us the new date yet.
Oh yeah. Hey, when you find the date, let me know. Indianapolis isn't too far.
I was going to say, that shouldn't be too far from you there. So yeah, when they finally, because they were supposed to have it like 2 months ago, and then the convention center was like, sorry, we don't want to do it with COVID, so we can't. They just totally shoved them out. So now they're looking for a location, and they got to move it off. So when they announce that one, I will let you know.
Sounds good. Yeah, shoot me that date. Valerie, thank you so much for your kind words. I do appreciate that.
So hopefully it won't be that long until the next time you come on.
Yeah, I'm working on another book now, so I will join you again. I promise.
Oh yes. Keep me in touch. Keep me informed. But yeah, I usually follow your page, so I mean, people can because you do have a Facebook page.
I do. Yeah. I have several Facebook pages.
So, is there anyone that people can follow?
I have pages for Ghosts of the Illinois River, and for Fractured Spirits, and for Lights Out. Just type in Fractured Spirits or Lights Out or whatever into Facebook, and you can find my page and subscribe, and or like the page rather, and yeah, you'll find out exactly what I'm up to.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on and talking to us about this book. I'm definitely going to have to get it. I hope everyone else buys it. Like I said, I put the link on there. Everything's there for people to click on. So, and thanks everyone for watching.
Yes, thank you so much for tuning in. This was a blast.
Yep.
Yes. So again, thanks for coming on, Sylvia. I'm sure I will talk to you at some point and have you on soon.
Yes.
Till next time. I'm glad to have you on here.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian, and thanks, Dan, for inviting me. And I will join you another time. And hopefully we will iron out the gremlins.
Mm-hmm.
I hope so. All right. Have a good one. Oh, I cut her off. I'm sorry. I apologize. All right, everyone. Have a great time. We'll see you all next week. Dan's got to go. I got to go. So,
yep. We're off.
Goodbye.
Good night, everybody.